You want to change your life. You want to break through the walls that have been holding you back. Then learn these. Because your future doesn't wait for you to figure things out. It's demanding that you rise now. First, learn focus. Most people are scattered, distracted, pulled in 1,000 directions by noise that doesn't matter. But when you learn to lock your mind on a vision, when you learn to shut down everything that isn't aligned with your destiny, you become unstoppable. Focus is the difference between dabbling and dominating. Second, learn discipline. Everyone wants results, but few are willing to pay the price. Discipline is not punishment. It's freedom. It's the power to do what must be done, even when you don't feel like it. It's saying no to the easy path and yes to the path that builds the life you've been dreaming about. Third, learn emotional control. Your emotions are either your prison or your power. Anger, fear, doubt, they'll eat you alive if you let them. But when you learn to master your state, when you can turn fear into fuel, when you can turn stress into strategy, you own your life instead of being owned by it. Fourth, learn persistence. Life is not a straight line. You will be tested. You will fail. You will be knocked to the ground. But persistence is the muscle that keeps pulling you back up again and again until life finally breaks and hands you what you demanded from it. Fifth, learn gratitude. Because no matter how much you achieve, if you cannot feel alive in the small things, you'll always feel empty. Gratitude is the anchor that keeps your soul from drifting into scarcity and comparison. It's the force that turns everything you already have into enough while pulling in even more. And finally, learn courage. Courage doesn't mean you're not afraid. Courage means you act in spite of fear. Every breakthrough in history, every invention, every revolution, every success was built by someone who was terrified and still moved forward. So learn these, burn them into your identity. Because when you master focus, discipline, emotional control, persistence, gratitude, and courage, you don't just learn skills, you learn how to own your destiny. The world doesn't reward wishes, it rewards warriors. So learn these and become the kind of person who doesn't just dream, but makes dreams inevitable. Focus is the single most powerful weapon you have, and yet it is the one thing most people never learn to master. Think about it, the greatest athletes, the most successful entrepreneurs, the most brilliant minds in history. They didn't win because they knew more. They won because they learned how to channel their attention like a laser. Focus is the amplifier of effort. Most people scatter their energy into 1,000 tiny streams, and then they wonder why they feel exhausted but have no results to show for it. It's not because they are weak, it's because they are unfocused. When your mind is scattered, your life is scattered. But when you learn to focus, you create clarity, power, and unstoppable momentum. The truth is, distraction is the enemy that kills more dreams than failure ever will. In today's world, distraction is everywhere, pulling you left and right. Every second of the day, you live in a culture designed to steal your focus. Your phone, your notifications, your social media feeds, your endless to-do lists. And the result, you give your attention to things that don't matter, and you starve the very things that could change your life. Imagine if you took every ounce of energy you waste scrolling, worrying, gossiping, or reacting, and you directed it toward one mission, one goal, one clear outcome. Do you realize the level of transformation that would unleash in your life? Do you realize the doors that would open if you stopped watering weeds and started watering seeds? Focus is not just about saying yes to the right things. It's about learning to say no to the wrong ones. Every yes you give is also a no to something else. Most people say yes to distractions, and by default, they say no to their dreams. They say yes to entertainment and no to growth. They say yes to comfort and no to discipline. They say yes to fitting in and no to standing out. If you don't control your focus, the world will control it for you. The people who win in life are not necessarily the most talented. They are the ones who are ruthless with their focus. They know what matters, and they shut down everything that doesn't serve that purpose. When you train your focus, you train your destiny. Think about a magnifying glass. When the sun's light is spread across the whole ground, nothing happens. But when you concentrate that same energy through a small lens, you can ignite a fire. That's what focus does to your life. It takes the scattered light of your potential and ignites it into flames of results. Without focus, all the knowledge, skills, and opportunities in the world go to waste. With focus, even a small amount of energy produces extraordinary results. So how do you learn focus? It starts with clarity. You cannot focus if you don't know what matters. You need to decide with absolute certainty what your vision is. Not a vague wish, not a half-hearted intention, but a crystal clear outcome that you burn into your mind every single day. When you know what you want, your brain has a target to lock onto. Most people don't lack focus because they're incapable. They lack focus because they don't even know where to direct it. Decide, choose, commit. Once the target is locked in, Focus becomes natural. The next step is elimination. You cannot focus if you are drowning in clutter. That means cutting out what doesn't matter. If you're serious about your dream, there are things you will no longer tolerate. People who drain your energy, habits that waste your time, environments that distract you. These must go. You cannot keep feeding distraction, expect focus to thrive. Focus requires space. You have to carve out the mental, emotional, and physical room for it to exist. Then comes practice. Focus is a muscle. If you've spent years scattered, distracted, multitasking, then you cannot expect to suddenly have laser focus overnight. You must train it. That means practicing presence. That means training yourself to stay with one task until it's done. That means resisting the urge to check your phone every 2 minutes. That means setting time aside each day where you block the world out and dive deeply into one thing. At first, your mind will resist. It will crave distraction like an addict craves a fix. But every time you hold the line, every time you redirect yourself back to the task, your focus muscle grows stronger. And then there's energy. You cannot focus if you are exhausted, unhealthy, or mentally burned out. Your body and mind are the foundation of focus. Sleep, nutrition, movement, and recovery are not optional. They are the fuel for your ability to concentrate. A foggy brain cannot focus. A tired body cannot focus. If you want the ability to sustain attention, you need to take care of the vessel that carries it. Energy is the silent partner of focus. Without it, even the best intentions collapse. Focus also requires emotional mastery, because every time fear creeps in, every time doubt shows up, every time worry hijacks your thoughts, your focus is stolen. If you let your emotions run wild, your attention will always be scattered. You must learn to command your state. You must learn to shift quickly from fear into certainty, from worry into action, from stress into clarity. When your emotions are aligned, your focus is sharper. When your emotions are chaotic, your focus is shattered. Most people live in reaction, not focus. They wake up reacting to their phone, reacting to emails, reacting to problems, reacting to other people's demands. Their entire day is stolen by whatever yells the loudest. Focus flips the script. Focus means you decide what matters most before the world gets a vote. Focus means you create your day on your terms instead of living in reaction. Focus means you control your attention like a warrior guarding the gates of your mind. And the final piece of focus is faith. You must believe that what you are focusing on will pay off. Because if you doubt your mission, if you second guess your path, your attention will be scattered. Faith locks your focus in place. It gives you the patience to stay the course when results don't show up immediately. Without faith, you will jump from one thing to the next, chasing every shiny object, never going deep enough to create real results. With faith, you stay locked in. You keep showing up. You keep pouring in your energy until the breakthrough comes. Focus is not just a skill. It's an identity. It's not something you do once in a while. It's who you become. You become the person who is immune to distraction, the person who knows exactly what matters and refuses to compromise, the person who pours every ounce of energy into what counts and watches life bend under the weight of that concentrated force. The people who build legacies, the people who change the world, the people who live with passion and impact, they all share this one trait. They learned focus. Discipline is the invisible bridge between desire and destiny. Everyone wants success. Everyone dreams of freedom. Everyone says they want to change their life, but very few are willing to pay the daily price. Discipline is not about punishment. It is about power. It is the commitment to act not when it is convenient, not when it feels good, not when the mood strikes, but every single time it is required. Discipline is the art of doing what must be done, especially when you least feel like it. It is the decision to let action lead and emotions follow instead of emotions dictating your actions. The world celebrates motivation, but motivation fades. Motivation is a spark. It ignites, it excites, it makes you feel unstoppable in the moment, but when the feeling fades, when life gets heavy, when circumstances are against you, motivation disappears. Discipline is different. Discipline is the fire that keeps burning when the spark is gone. Discipline shows up when you are tired, when you are uninspired, when you are bored, when you are frustrated. Discipline doesn't ask for permission from your feelings. Discipline simply acts. Most people live in a cycle of inconsistency. They start strong, they get excited, they put in the work for a few days, maybe a few weeks, but then life happens. They miss one day, then two, and then they quit. Not because they don't have the potential, not because they don't have the ability, but because they never developed the discipline to keep going when it wasn't fun. The truth is, results are not born from what you do occasionally. They are born from what you do consistently. Consistency is the child of discipline. Without discipline, you will always live in the realm of almost nearly someday. With discipline, you step into the realm of done, completed, achieved. Discipline is freedom disguised as structure. Most people think discipline is restrictive, that it takes away their freedom, but the opposite is true. When you lack discipline, you become a slave to your impulses. You eat what you crave, you spend when you feel like it, you procrastinate when the task looks hard, and in the end you are trapped by the very choices you thought were freedom. Real freedom comes when you control yourself, when you command your habits, when you direct your actions regardless of temptation. That is when you truly own your life, because you are no longer owned by your impulses. Discipline is built in the small moments, the choices that look insignificant but stack up into destiny. It is the decision to wake up when the alarm rings instead of hitting snooze. It is the decision to put in the extra rep at the gym when your body says stop. It is the decision to study one more hour, to make one more call, to push one more time when you feel like giving in. Each act of discipline is a deposit in the bank of your future. Over time, those deposits compound and they build a life of strength, success, and freedom. Without those deposits, you live in debt to your potential. Discipline is also about standards. It is the line you draw in the sand about who you are and what you tolerate. People without discipline live by feelings. If they feel like working hard, they work hard. If they feel like slacking, they slack. But a disciplined person lives by standards. Their standard says, I show up no matter what. I give my best no matter what. I honor my word no matter what. Discipline means your standards are stronger than your feelings, your commitments louder than your excuses. There will be days when discipline feels like a battle. Days when everything in you screams to quit, to delay, to cut corners. Those are the defining moments. Because discipline is forged in resistance. Every time you say no to temptation, you strengthen the muscle. Every time you push through fatigue, you strengthen the muscle. Every time you choose responsibility over excuse, you strengthen the muscle. Discipline grows the same way physical strength grows, by resistance, by repetition, by refusing to surrender when it gets hard. Discipline requires vision. You cannot stay disciplined without a clear reason why. If the reason is weak, your discipline will be weak. If the reason is strong, your discipline will be unbreakable. You must tie every act of discipline to a purpose greater than the moment. When you connect waking up early to building your dream business, when you connect saving money to giving your family security, when you connect saying no to junk food to living a long, healthy life, suddenly discipline stops feeling like deprivation and starts feeling like alignment. Discipline is also about integrity with yourself. Every time you make a promise to yourself and keep it, your confidence grows. Every time you make a promise to yourself and break it, your confidence shrinks. Most people don't trust themselves because they have trained themselves to break their own word. They say, I'll start tomorrow, but they don't. They say, I'll quit the bad habit, but they don't. They say, I'll follow through, but they don't. Over time, they erode their own self-belief. Discipline restores that integrity. Discipline is saying, I do what I say I'll do, even when no one is watching. Discipline is the quiet, unshakable pride that comes from knowing you can trust yourself completely. It is easy to admire discipline in others, but you must cultivate it in yourself. Watch the athlete who trains before dawn every day, the musician who practices the same note for hours, the entrepreneur who works relentlessly on their craft while others sleep. They are not superhuman. They simply built discipline. And what they built, you can build. It is a choice. It is a practice. It is a commitment. Discipline does not belong to a chosen few. It belongs to those who choose it. There will never be a perfect time to start. If you wait for motivation, you will wait forever. If you wait for circumstances to align, you will wait forever. Discipline begins now, in this moment, in the choice you make today. It is not about perfection. It is about persistence. It is not about doing everything right. It's about refusing to quit when it gets hard. It is not about controlling everything. It is about controlling yourself. The irony is, once you live with discipline long enough, it stops feeling like discipline. It becomes who you are. At first, it feels heavy, like effort, like sacrifice. But with repetition, it becomes automatic. It becomes natural. It becomes effortless. What once felt impossible becomes your normal. That is the gift of discipline. It transforms hard into easy, effort into instinct, struggle into strength. Discipline is the foundation on which every achievement is built. Without it, talent is wasted, potential is wasted, dreams are wasted. With it, even ordinary people accomplish extraordinary things. Discipline is not glamorous. It is not always exciting. It is not often celebrated, but it is the one trait that separates those who dream from those who do. Discipline is the path, the process, the price, and the prize all at once. Emotional control is one of the greatest skills you can ever master because your emotions are the invisible force that shapes every decision, every behavior, every action you take. Most people think their life is dictated by circumstances, but in reality, their life is dictated by how they respond to those circumstances. Two people can face the same challenge. One falls apart and quits. The other rises stronger and grows. The difference is not the problem. The difference is emotional control. If you can command your emotional state, you can command your entire life. If you cannot, then you will always be a slave to moods, reactions, and impulses that rob you of your power. Your emotions are energy in motion. They are signals, they are fuel, they are tools. But for most people, emotions become traps. Anger becomes destructive. Fear becomes paralyzing. Doubt becomes limiting. Stress becomes overwhelming. Instead of using emotions as signals to guide them, people let emotions dominate them. And when emotions dominate you, logic disappears, clarity disappears, opportunity disappears. You cannot make powerful decisions from a chaotic state. You cannot lead your life with certainty if your emotions are swinging wildly from one extreme to the other. Emotional control is not about denying emotions. It is about mastering them, channeling them, turning them into fuel instead of chains. Think about anger. Anger can be destructive. It can ruin relationships, burn bridges, create regret. But anger can also be fuel. Anger at your own excuses, anger at your own limitations, anger at the life you refuse to settle for. That kind of anger is energy that pushes you to act, to change, to demand more from yourself. The difference is control. Fear is the same way. Fear can paralyze you, make you hide, stop you from taking risks. But fear can also sharpen you, heighten your senses, keep you alert, push you to prepare and grow. Again, the difference is control. Stress can overwhelm and break you, but stress can also stretch you, expand your capacity, make you stronger. Every emotion has a destructive side and a constructive side. Emotional control is the art of choosing which side you live on. Most people live in reaction. Something happens, they react instantly, emotionally, without thought. Someone insults them, they get angry. Someone doubts them, they get insecure. Something doesn't go their way, they get frustrated. This cycle of reaction keeps them trapped in emotional chaos. But emotional control flips the script. Instead of reacting, you respond. You create space between stimulus and response. In that space, you decide who you are, how you show up, what meaning you give to the event. That space is power, and most people never use it because they train themselves to live on autopilot. Emotional control is about expanding that space, about teaching yourself to pause, breathe, and choose instead of react. This control begins with awareness. You cannot master what you are unaware of. Most people are so consumed by their emotions that they don't even realize they are trapped in them. They feel angry and assume anger is truth. They feel fear and assume fear is reality. They feel doubt and assume doubt is certainty. Emotional control requires you to step back, to become the observer, to recognize what you are feeling without becoming the feeling. Instead of, I am angry, you shift to, I notice anger is rising in me. Instead of, I am afraid, you shift to, I feel fear, but I am not fear. This small shift of language is massive because it separates your identity from the emotion. And when you separate yourself from the emotion, you regain control over it. Once you have awareness, the next step is interruption. You must learn to break the emotional pattern in the moment. If stress rises, shift your body. Stand up, breathe deeply, move differently. If fear rises, interrupt it with action. Do something small immediately that moves you forward. If anger rises, pause, breathe, change your physical state before you respond. Emotions live in your body, and if you shift your body, you shift your state. Too many people try to fight emotions in their mind while staying physically stuck. The body is the fastest way to break the cycle. Change your physiology and your psychology follows. Then comes replacement. Emotional control is not just about suppressing negative emotions, it is about replacing them with empowering ones. If you feel fear, you replace it with courage by taking action in spite of it. If you feel doubt, you replace it with certainty by focusing on your past wins, your strengths, your preparation. If you feel frustration, you replace it with curiosity by asking better questions, by seeking solutions instead of dwelling on problems. The human brain cannot hold two opposing emotional states at the same time. You cannot be deeply grateful and deeply fearful at the same time. You cannot be deeply angry and deeply compassionate at the same time. Replacing emotions is the act of consciously choosing which state you will live in. Another element of emotional control is meaning. Nothing in life has meaning except the meaning you assign to it. The same event can make one person bitter and another person better. The difference is the story they tell themselves about the event. If you tell yourself failure means you are not good enough, you will feel defeated. If you tell yourself failure means you are learning and growing, you will feel motivated. The meaning creates the emotion creates the action creates the result. By changing meaning, you change the entire chain. Emotional control is not about controlling external events, it is about controlling the meaning you give them. And by doing so, you control your emotional state. Emotional control is also tied to standards. If you set the standard that no matter what happens, you will not let anger dictate your words, then you will rise to that standard. If you set the standard that you will not let fear dictate your decisions, then you will rise to that standard. If you set the standard that you will not let doubt dictate your effort, then you will rise to that standard. Your standards create boundaries for your emotions. Without standards, your emotions run wild. With standards, your emotions serve your vision. Developing emotional control is a lifelong practice. It requires self-reflection, discipline, and constant training. It is not about never feeling negative emotions. It is about not letting those emotions control you. You will still feel fear, but you will act. You will still feel anger, but you will channel it. You will still feel stress, but you will use it. The emotions don't disappear, but their power to dictate your life does. Emotional control transforms you from being a prisoner of circumstance to being the creator of your experience. The people who thrive, who lead, who inspire are not those who never feel fear or stress. They are those who feel them and move anyway. They have trained themselves to rise above, to master their state, to choose their response. That is why they can stay calm in chaos, strong in adversity, focused under pressure. They don't let emotions weaken them. They let emotions sharpen them. Emotional control is the silent strength that makes leaders unshakable, entrepreneurs relentless, athletes unstoppable. It is the difference between breaking under pressure and breaking through because of it. Persistence is the force that separates the dreamers from the achievers, the talkers from the doers, the almost from the unstoppable. Everyone loves to start. Everyone loves the excitement of a new idea, a new goal, a new challenge, but very few have the stamina to keep going when the excitement fades, when the obstacles show up, when the road feels endless. Persistence is the ability to continue despite resistance, to advance despite adversity, to push forward when everything around you screams to quit. It is the refusal to surrender, the unshakable decision that no matter how many times you fall, you will rise again and again and again. The truth is, life will test you. It will not hand you success just because you wish for it or even because you work hard for a short time. It will push back. It will throw challenges. It will put up walls. It will knock you down to see if you are serious. Most people quit not because they lack talent, not because they lack opportunity, but because they lack persistence. They interpret the first setback as a sign to stop. They let failure define them instead of refine them. They see resistance and assume it is rejection. But persistence understands that resistance is part of the process, that failure is feedback, that obstacles are opportunities to grow stronger. Every breakthrough in history, every invention, every discovery, every great achievement was the product of persistence. The greatest innovators failed more times than they succeeded, but they kept going. The greatest athletes lost more games than they won, but they kept going. The greatest leaders were doubted, resisted, opposed, but they kept going. Persistence is the common thread, the one trait that guarantees progress, because talent without persistence collapses under pressure. Knowledge without persistence fades when results take longer than expected. Passion without persistence burns out when the fire of motivation dies. Persistence sustains when nothing else does. Most people underestimate the time and effort required to achieve something significant. They think the path will be shorter, smoother, easier. When it's not, they assume they are failing. But persistence understands that everything worthwhile takes longer than expected, costs more than imagined, and requires more sacrifice than anticipated. Persistence recalibrates expectations. Instead of quitting when it gets tough, persistence says, this is the process, this is the path, this is what it takes. Persistence is not glamorous. It is not the highlight reel. It is not the shiny moments of victory. Persistence is often boring, repetitive grinding. It is the countless hours of practice, the long nights of work, the endless rejection, the uncomfortable conversations, the setbacks that feel like punches to the gut. It is showing up on the days you don't feel like it, pushing through when you're tired, continuing when the results are invisible. Persistence lives in the unseen, in the shadows, in the moments no one claps for you. But those are the moments that build the foundation of victory. Persistence requires vision. Without vision, persistence dies quickly. You must know why you are enduring, why you are sacrificing, why you are pushing through. If your vision is weak, you will quit. If your vision is strong, you will endure. Vision fuels persistence. It gives meaning to the struggle, purpose to the pain, strength to the suffering. When your vision is clear, quitting is not an option because you are not chasing comfort, you are chasing destiny. Persistence also requires flexibility. It does not mean doing the same thing the same way forever. It means holding on to the goal while adjusting the approach. It means being stubborn about the destination but flexible about the route. Too many people confuse persistence with blind stubbornness. They keep doing what doesn't work until they burn out. True persistence is intelligent. It learns from failure, adapts from feedback, adjusts the plan, but never abandons the mission. It is a combination of resilience and resourcefulness, the ability to keep going while also evolving. Another layer of persistence is patience. In a world addicted to instant gratification, patience is rare, but persistence demands it. Success is not microwaved, it is slow cooked. The roots grow underground long before the tree appears above the soil. You may be planting seeds, watering, nurturing, and seeing no visible results, but persistence knows growth is happening beneath the surface. Most people quit in that invisible season, never realizing how close they were to the breakthrough. Persistence is the ability to wait, to endure, to trust the process when there is no evidence of progress. Persistence is built through mindset. If you see failure as final, you quit. If you see failure as feedback, you continue. If you see rejection as proof you are not enough, you quit. If you see rejection as redirection, you continue. If you see obstacles as walls, you quit. If you see obstacles as tests, you continue. The difference is not in the challenge, it is in the interpretation. Persistence chooses the meaning that empowers, the perspective that strengthens, the mindset that refuses to surrender. It also requires resilience. Life will not just give you gentle obstacles, it will hit you hard. You will face betrayal, loss, rejection, and pain that cuts deep. Persistence is the resilience that absorbs the blow, learns from it, and keeps moving. It is the grit that refuses to let temporary pain stop permanent purpose. Every scar becomes a reminder not of defeat but of survival, of endurance, of strength. Persistence turns wounds into wisdom, pain into power, losses into lessons. Discipline fuels persistence. Without discipline, persistence collapses into inconsistency. Discipline is the daily commitment, the habit of showing up regardless of how you feel. Persistence is the long-term endurance, the bigger picture refusal to quit. Together, they create unstoppable force. Discipline is the engine. Persistence is the journey. One without the other fails. But when you build both, you become relentless. Persistence is also about identity. You cannot just try to persist. You must become the kind of person who persists. You must decide that quitting is not in your DNA, that giving up is not who you are. Identity drives behavior. If you see yourself as someone who always gives up, you will give up. If you see yourself as someone who always finds a way, you will find a way. Persistence is not just action, it is identity. It is who you decide to be in the face of adversity. Persistence is rare because it requires pain, patience, and sacrifice, but it is also what makes it powerful. Anyone can start, few can continue, fewer still can finish. But those who do are remembered, respected, rewarded. The world does not crown the fastest starter, it crowns the last one standing. That is persistence. Courage is the doorway to every transformation, the trait that makes all other traits possible, the force that separates a life of comfort from a life of meaning. Most people think courage is the absence of fear, but that is not true. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act in spite of fear. Courage is feeling the uncertainty, the risk, the doubt, and choosing to move anyway. Without courage, focus is wasted, discipline is never tested, emotional control is limited, persistence is abandoned. Courage is the trigger that sets everything else in motion. Fear is natural. Fear is part of the human experience. Fear shows up whenever you step into the unknown, whenever you challenge yourself, whenever you aim for something bigger than your current reality. Fear whispers in your ear that you are not ready, that you might fail, that others might laugh, that you might lose. And most people listen. They let fear dictate their choices. They let fear write their story. They let fear decide the limits of their life. Courage is the refusal to let fear be the author of your life. Courage is telling fear you hear it, but you are moving forward anyway. Every great achievement in history required courage. The first explorers who sailed into unknown seas, not knowing if they would ever return, acted with courage. The inventors who pursued ideas that seemed impossible and were mocked by their peers acted with courage. The leaders who stood against oppression, who spoke truth to power, who risked everything for freedom acted with courage. Courage is the common thread of progress. Nothing new, nothing extraordinary, nothing revolutionary has ever been built without it. Courage is not loud. Sometimes it is quiet, subtle, unseen. It is the student who raises their hand even when they are afraid of being wrong. It is the person who leaves a toxic relationship even when they fear being alone. It is the entrepreneur who risks rejection by sharing their idea with the world. It is the parent who sacrifices their own comfort to give their children a better life. Courage does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it is simply the act of showing up one more time when everything in you wants to hide. Fear thrives in imagination. Most of the things people fear never happen. Yet fear paralyzes them because they play out worst-case scenarios in their mind and then treat those scenarios as reality. Courage disrupts that pattern. Courage chooses action over imagination, movement over paralysis. Courage knows that the unknown will never shrink by waiting. It only shrinks by stepping into it. Every time you act with courage, fear loses power, the unknown becomes familiar, the impossible becomes possible. Courage requires vulnerability. To be courageous, you must be willing to be seen, to be judged, to be criticized. That is why so few people show real courage, because it exposes them. They would rather stay small, stay safe, stay unseen than risk failure or rejection. But without vulnerability, there is no growth. You cannot create, you cannot love, you cannot lead, you cannot live fully without risking something. Courage accepts vulnerability as the price of greatness. Courage is a habit. It is not a one-time act. It is not reserved for extraordinary moments. It is something you practice daily in small ways. Every time you make a difficult choice instead of the easy one, every time you speak up when it is uncomfortable, every time you take a step into uncertainty, you strengthen the muscle of courage. And like any muscle, the more you use it, the stronger it becomes. Eventually, courage becomes part of your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who hesitates and start seeing yourself as someone who acts. Courage is also contagious. When you act with courage, you give permission to others to do the same. When one person stands up, it inspires others to rise. When one person dares to pursue their dream, it awakens the possibility in others. Courage creates a ripple effect that transforms not just your life, but the lives of everyone who witnesses it. That is why leaders must have courage, because their courage sets the standard. It becomes the example that others follow. Courage is not reckless. It is not about ignoring risk. It is about acknowledging risk and moving forward intelligently. Recklessness is jumping without thinking. Courage is preparing, learning, strengthening, and then jumping even though the outcome is uncertain. Courage is not blind, it is aware, but it refuses to let awareness become paralysis. It is the balance of wisdom and bravery, the marriage of preparation and action. Courage demands faith. You must believe in something beyond the fear, whether it is belief in yourself, in your vision, in your purpose, or in a higher power guiding you. Faith is what allows courage to exist. Without faith, fear wins. With faith, courage steps forward. Faith does not eliminate fear, but it gives you something stronger to hold on to than the fear. It reminds you that there is more on the other side of fear than on the side of safety. Courage always comes with risk. There is no courage without the possibility of failure, without the chance of loss, without the danger of pain. That is why courage is rare, because it asks you to step into uncertainty willingly. But the paradox is that staying safe carries risk too, the risk of regret, the risk of wasted potential, the risk of never knowing what could have been. The pain of courage may last a moment, but the pain of regret lasts a lifetime. Courage is also the foundation of authenticity. To live as your true self requires courage, because the world will always try to mold you into something else. People will criticize, they will judge, they will try to pull you back into conformity. Courage is saying, I will be who I am, I will pursue what I believe, I will live my truth even if it means standing alone. Authenticity without courage is impossible, and without authenticity, life feels hollow. Courage transforms fear into fuel. Every time you do something you fear, the fear shrinks and the courage grows. What once seemed impossible becomes normal. What once seemed terrifying becomes exciting. The cycle flips. Instead of being driven by fear, you are driven by courage. Instead of shrinking from challenges, you seek them. Instead of avoiding risk, you embrace it as the price of growth. Courage reprograms your relationship with fear until fear is no longer an enemy, but a signal that you are on the edge of expansion. Courage is the foundation of leadership, of innovation, of love, of growth. Without it, you stay trapped in the familiar. With it, you open the door to everything you have ever wanted. Courage is not something you wait to feel. It is something you choose to practice. You choose it in the small daily acts. You choose it in the big defining moments. You choose it every time fear whispers, and you answer with action.